Okay, so I want to talk about the real reason why so many men are homophobic, and it's basically shadow projection. A lot of the men in this world are regressed, corrupt, or at the least, or even just anxious. Okay, and these anxious, regressed, or corrupt men have this thing where it's almost like they have this werewolf, this wereweasel, this werefox, this werewolf, this were rat jaguar on their back. Okay, it's kind of like, have you seen that where you smash Play-Doh and it kind of comes up like this? These men are repressing their sort of baser primal nature, and it sort of comes up like that Play-Doh, like that clay, where it's like, I mean, sometimes we say in our language they have a devil on their back. It's like this, you can't repress that baser primal nature. So it kind of comes up like Play-Doh, where it's like they're just have this corrupt, regressed nature. Okay, where and where people will say men are dogs, men act like dogs, right? Um, and they're projecting that sort of predatory, primal nature. I mean, it almost functions like how how people can have like multiple identities. It almost functions like an altar. These men repress that sort of primal, wild, predatory nature, and it becomes like this altar that has like this werewolf sort of vibe. So men project that sort of wild altar onto other men. Okay, men are homophobic basically because they're terrified of being raped, but men are like the least demographic likely to be raped. In many countries, it rarely even happens in prison anymore. The demographic that's least likely to be raped is the most terrified of being raped, and the demographic that's most likely to be raped has to deal with rape culture and it's sort of minimized. How insane is that? But because you're only terrified of being raped is because you're projecting that wild altar, that corrupt altar, that primal altar, that predatory altar onto other men, right? You can see this where there was this video where it's like this college prank videos. I'll see if I can find it, and I'm going to put a link and like a timestamp because they suggest pranks, and they suggest that this guy do a prank where he hits on other guys. Okay, so he's going around, he's hitting on other guys, and there's like funny things and this and type of thing. But there's this one guy, he's hitting on this guy. He's like feet away from him, a good distance away from him. This guy is like literally screeching, but also going like this, as if he's being mounted. Not exaggerating. He's going over like this. Like, what? 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 And the guy's just hitting on him, just like, hey, like, he's being mounted because that sort of shadow altar is sort of basically raping him, right? You sort of project because they're projecting that that's their own shadow is raping them. Basically, like, because but what they're doing is that they're, since they're projecting that shadow on almost to on that guy like a hologram. So then they're in their sort of space, they are anticipating or imagining that shadow projected hologram thingy is attacking them. Like, like when someone's about to throw something and you kind of like, someone's about to throw something past you and you kind of like start flinching because like you're imagining that it's going to hit you. They're imagining that projected shadow is attacking them. They're being shadow raped by their own selves. And then gay guys, they just associate gay men with anal sex. So that is sort of just, it's just becomes this very hard shadow projection. And then some of them will sort of spiral or have a meltdown because then their buttholes twitch and they get kind of pissed and angry. Have you guys seen them spiral? But they feel like that doesn't mean you're gay. That doesn't make you gay. It's the same thing where it's anticipation. You're anticipating that you're going to be anally penetrated, so you're biologically reacting. A lot of guys experience that, but you're anticipating your own shadow projection. Raping you, it just rarely doesn't happen, and then you can tell because it's insane. Because it's like, who's gonna rape you in public in front of a bunch of people? But that, have you guys seen like the fear in their eyes, where they're like, oh, it's you. You're raping yourself. You're afraid of your own self. Okay. And this is why there's like laws in countries where, I mean, first of all, that's like why there's that, why gay men use gay as an insult. It's almost like a incantation. It's like an anti-rape culture where there's like constantly like, it's like incense where they're like, that's gay. Like they're putting like this protective barrier around themselves because they're in constant fear. They're obsessed with like anal sex, being anally penetrated by men because of that sort of repressed shadow, in a sense, that shadow altar. That's why they're constantly saying that, like, that's gay, using gay as an insult. It's like anti-rape culture. But the demographic that's least likely to be raped has the anti-rape culture, and the demographic that's most likely to rape has to deal with rape culture. Shouldn't they have the anti-rape culture? Imagine if they were like, women were going around like, that's men, like as an insult. Like, if you do that, you're a man, because that's what it is. And another thing, a bit of tangent on that, it's like men are so terrified. It's like they're not terrified of like the physical violence of it. They're not terrified of how like violating it is. They're more terrified of like just the idea of being sort of dominated by a man, especially a gay identified man. Like that sort of status or like ego death is worse than death to them. Okay. But that's why they do that. And then that's why it's like always these like incongruent laws. Like they'll be in countries where it's like it's illegal for you to be gay, but it doesn't apply to women. If you guys are against gay people and like homosexuality or whatever you want to call it, wouldn't it apply? It would apply to everyone. Or how men will be homophobic, but they'll watch porn with like women making out and like messing around with each other. That's totally inconsistent. It's because men tolerate or even embrace female homosexuality because it's non threatening. They just heavily associate or correlate male homosexuality with anal sex, and that terrifies them because they are projecting that sort of predatory, primal vibe onto them, that alter onto men. Like, and that's why that first thing they go to, like when people try to denounce like homosexuality, they'll go to anal sex, like that's the only thing about it. Their mind instantly goes to anal sex because they're terrified of being anally penetrated by other men. But that's only because you're projecting that shadow, that altar. Like people will say it's most likely like a lot of these homophobes are most likely secretly gay. I wouldn't say that. I would say it makes them more secretly like most likely to be like uh, predatory, like rapey. Okay, because it's this repressed predatoriness, like which when sort of integrated, it's not even that becomes that sort of driven, sort of seeking exploitative nature. But and I'm not totally vilifying men because it's more of a societal issue. Like if men didn't repress their primal side, it would just be more an assertive side. It's like men are a lot of men are very fragmented and have these alternate identities and alter egos or alters or whatever you want to call it. And women, you guys can feel that. Like men have that sort of penetrative energy. Like women will talk about like a man come up to them, they have their like nice guy persona, but you can intuitively sense that they basically just want to penetrate you. That penetrative energy they project onto other men, so they think men want to penetrate them. Like it's the same thing with anything else. Like, have you guys seen those people who get in the fights? Like, you could be chilling, but that person is perceiving you. That another person is perceiving them as they're being angry. Like, you could just be totally chill, but if that person has that like sort of repressed anger and aggression, they're repressing that anger and aggression onto that person, where that person looks like they're mad, but they're totally zen. Like I've seen fights happen because of that. It's the same thing, but with that sort of primal drive, that sex drive. Like men have alters because of a repressed sex drive, which they project onto other men, especially gay men. And that's why they're homophobic.